Hi! So in the last video I made, which was a vlog type of video, I was speaking in Bahasa or Indonesian language, in which I talk a lot about books. I pretty much rant about books. I thought because I haven't really figured out how to do closed caption or subtitles, I would just do another video in English talking about books. You can probably tell from the title it's going to be a video on why I started reading books, my recommendations, and why I think you should do it too. So a little bit background on why I started reading books. So I had actually started reading books since I was in probably end of primary school to the beginning of junior high. So I was probably around 13 years old at the time. But the kind of books that I read was typical young adults fiction novels, usually in the genre of romance or thriller or mystery. Those two were my favorite. But the more I grew up, the more I kind of just like drifted away from those kind of things and I just stopped reading altogether. Again, because I used to live in Indonesia and I didn't live in Jakarta where, you know, probably you would have more access to English books. My access to English books were from my English tuition. So I had an English lesson in which we would read new English book every a couple of months. So it takes us once a week to read several pages together in the tuition. Because I stopped, found it quite hard to get myself back to reading, but I think when I reached uni is where I felt the need to read. So yeah, you can say that back then it was just pure hobby, now it is a hobby and a need. The reason why I say it's a need, basically these all books right here, it's not even all, I have more. So these all started because I felt bored. I felt like I questioned myself a lot. So back in January, I was very sick. I've never been this sick in my entire life. It was the sickest I had ever been. Even the doctors thought I had meningitis. Long story short, it was just a viral infection that apparently had very similar symptoms to meningitis. Thankfully, I did not have meningitis, okay? I just have to put it out there. Because I was pretty sick, it took me quite a while to recover. It was like around 2-3 weeks recovery period. And during those times, I was advised not to do anything, including going out. So I spent most of my days in my room watching Netflix or YouTube. And the more I watched them, the more I found them very boring. The more I found pattern in all these movies and videos. So I wasn't really entertained at all. I didn't really get anything, even from watching like TED Talks, because I used to love TED Talks. I started having a lot of internal discussion. I questioned a lot of things. Why I exist, what's my purpose in life, you know, those kind of big questions you would never find the answer to. Or at least that's what I thought. I remember one day I felt just very hopeless, like I felt like my life's gonna end anyway, you know, in the future, and I didn't really want to do anything. It was the literal bored to death kind of situation. So I told myself I couldn't be this way. Like I couldn't just, you know, stay discussing things internally and not addressing my thoughts, because a lot of times I didn't know if I had the right thoughts or if I were thinking about the right thing, if that makes sense. I don't really know if that makes sense, but yeah, I just questioned myself a lot. I doubt myself a lot, especially being an international student in a foreign country. I kind of questioned my decision moving to the UK for study, and like, oh, why am I spending all these monies and I'm just like here laying in bed doing nothing. So that's when I started googling about self-help books, and so this will be my very first recommendation. The very first book that I read, You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. This book taught a lot of aspect of growing yourself to become a badass person. And what I like about this book is like the way she wrote this book. It almost felt like you have a big sister teaching you life lessons. That's the best way I can put this out. It's also about how to stop, well, basically how to stop doubting yourself. Yeah, just like what the title says. Recommendation number 1. The second book is it's actually written by a Buddhist monk called Haemin Sunim. The title is Love for Imperfect Things. This book is so pretty. Let me just start by pointing out how aesthetic this book looks. I know I shouldn't be focusing on the aesthetic, but this book, I would say, teach a lot about the art of letting go. As a person, I am very perfectionist, or should I say I used to be very perfectionist. I like things in order. I almost felt like I have OCD, but I'm not like clinically OCD. I just had like tendency to want things to be perfect. So this book kind of touches on a lot of areas in your life, teaching you how to let go of the want or the need for things to be perfect. It talks about how you can do it in family, on yourself, healing, being empathetic, and things like that. So this book, my sister and I describe it as a book that kind of hugs you. I don't know, like when I read this, I just feel warmth. I don't know, maybe it's because it's written by a Buddhist monk, but yeah. Third book is Growth Hacker Marketing by Ryan Holiday. I love how concise this book is, but I think it's not really applicable for me now or at the time I read this. It talked a lot about disruptive way of marketing, if that's even a word. This is the book that I will revisit when say I have a business in the future. But yeah, it's a really good book, really concise, and I just love how practical this book is. Book number 4 is the one I got recently. So in the vlog that I mentioned, I went to London and I went to Foyles. I love Foyles, but I noticed that it is quite expensive as compared to buying the books on Amazon. So basically I told myself that I wouldn't buy any book, but I ended up buying the book. Basically talks about how nowadays listening has become very, very difficult for us to do. So for example, like in conversation, we listen to answer. We listen and judge instead of, just listen and understand. It taught you how to start listening again in the world that listening has become very, very rare. Next book is the one I just finished yesterday. It's called How to Own the Room. So I'm currently working and I found it very, very difficult for me to speak or to communicate my thoughts. Yes, there are some cultural aspect. Yes, there is some part of me that is, quite introvert, so I find it quite difficult to sometimes, let my thoughts out. And this book talk about different ways or different styles of public speaking. It does say women and the art of brilliant speaking, but it's not specifically for women, but the example that she uses are all women. Michelle Obama, Oprah, Hillary Clinton, J.K. Rowling, Christine Lagarde, I don't know how to pronounce her name. But anyways, this book basically says like no matter what style you have in public speaking, you can be a good public speaker. And it's all about finding your style and what you feel most comfortable doing. Another book that I've read this year is called Marketing in Challenging Times. This is an Indonesian book. It's written by a really great Indonesian marketing guru called Hermawan Kertajaya. This book is in Bahasa. My dad basically recommended me this book. Well, he got it for himself and then he finished reading it and he gave it to me. This is, yeah, like what it says, marketing in challenging times. So when crisis is happening, a lot of times it's actually your biggest opportunity to market your product or to market your service. Things like that. So it's again very, very practical. It's theoretical but at the same time very practical too. So again, not the kind of book that applies to me currently, but in the future, if again I were to create my own business, this will be the book that I refer to, that I will revisit and reread. The next one is my favorite of all the books that I have shown and I will be showing. Becoming by Michelle Obama. This book is the thickest book I've read this year and also the book that I really enjoy reading. It's basically about her life, her journey, not only her life as the former First Lady of America, but also her life before all that happened. And this is actually the book that really sparked my interest in politics Hence, I have a lot of politics book in my wish list currently that I really want to read because of her, because of this book. This is very inspiring and I highly recommend you to get this. Not specifically for the politics part, but just, you know, for you to be inspired, because she showed how she didn't came from a place of wealth or fame or things like that. She basically came from a normal place like most of us did. There's also a really good portion of her vulnerability in this book, showing that, you know, these kind of people, they're not perfect all the time, although it seemed like they are. And yeah, I love this book so much and I would recommend this to anyone. Please have a read. Please grab one for yourself. So the next book, I don't really have a copy with me right now because I left it at home. It's called 0 to 1 by, if I'm not mistaken, Peter Thiel. He was a co-founder of PayPal. Okay, the concept is quite similar to another book that I'll be mentioning next, but he basically talked about how you can't just copy what everyone else are doing if you want to do like a disruptive, breaking through kind of business. That's why the name, you know, you have to go from 0 to 1, not from like 1 to n number, if that makes sense. The next one is called The Blue Ocean Strategy. This is the book that also my dad recommended to me. In a nutshell, it's basically about when you want to create a business or you have a pre-existing business, you can't compete in the red ocean or where competition is very high and there's just a lot of similar kind of business in that market. Instead, you have to create your own blue ocean, which is not very competitive, so you have your own uniqueness or you have your own thing. Yeah, it's kind of similar to the previous one that I mentioned, 0 to 1, but yeah, just different ways of incorporating that concept to your business. So again, very practical book. The next one is The $100 Startup. I also don't have the book right now with me because I borrowed it from my university. I wouldn't say I like it very much. It's more informative than inspiring. It talked about different kinds of businesses that actually started without a huge amount of investment. That's basically it. And also like some practical tips, but I found it quite overwhelming. Again, the fact that I don't currently own a proper business. The next book that I read was also a book I borrowed from my library. It's called Think Small. I know, it's a bit like a reverse psychology. You know, people always say, you know, you gotta think big, you gotta aim big, things like that. But this book really taught you why you should think small, why you should start from the very little things in life. Because those little things are the ones that can create big changes. And this is actually written by, I believe, behavioral economists. The content is around behavioral economics and how you can apply behavioral economics to your personal daily life to achieve whatever goal you want to achieve in life. I know I can be quite biased here because I learned economics and I love behavioral economics, so that's maybe the reason why I like it, but I do recommend this book for anyone who struggle to achieve goals and struggle to become disciplined with themselves. Okay, on to the current reads. I have 2 current reads, actually 3, but the other one is currently with my sister, so I don't have the book. But I'm currently reading Life 3.0. This book is very intense, if I should say. I am still on chapter 2. I have been reading this for, I think, 2 weeks. It was a pain to read, not because it's badly written, it was just like a bit like, oh. It was because things mentioned in this book, to me, are quite new, and I felt like this surge of information, like information overload. And yeah, there are also a lot of jargon in this book. Max, the writer, basically says that there are 3 versions of life. Life 1.0, Life 2.0, Life 3.0. Life 1.0 is like bacteria, so they have unchangeable hardware, the body, and a very slow changing software. It took a long time for them to evolve. Whereas Life 2.0 is like us human, we can change our hardware in terms of, you know, getting surgery or operations, things like that, and we can easily update our software in a sense that we can learn from books, you know, get yourself more educated, things like that. And Life 3.0 is the AI or artificial intelligence, where they can create their hardware, they can also create their software and exponentially better themselves. I think that's what did, you know, the gist that I kind of get in the first chapter. But I can't really say if that's completely correct. I might misinterpret something because I haven't really finished the whole book. But yeah. Next one is called The New Silk Roads. I actually bought this a while ago, but I haven't really like properly read it. I went through the introduction page. It's basically about China and how they have become, you know, one of the superpower countries. I don't know if that is actually it, but I mean, I haven't finished reading it. But at the back it says, this is why I get the book, because of the quote at the back. All roads used to lead to Rome. Today they lead to Beijing. I felt like that was such a powerful statement, and yeah. So the last book I read, but I currently don't have a copy of it because it's with my sister, because she was very interested in this book too. It's called Visual Intelligence by Amy Herman. It basically talks about how you could better your observation skills to notice things that people tend to miss, and how you could infer a lot more information and a lot more interpretation from certain things that you see. And she uses a lot of art pieces in the book to, you know, as practice tools for us. I love that book. I think that is the second most favorite book of this year after Becoming by Michelle Obama. And it was very practical, but at the same time it's not the boring kind of practical. I honestly felt immensely helped with books. I felt like there are just a lot of times where I had a certain thought, but I don't know if I'm thinking about the right thing, as I mentioned before, or I have certain things or certain skills I'm not really good at, say communication or things like that, and I resort to books a lot given that I also don't really like social interaction, which is pretty bad. You know, don't do this for yourself. I don't know, I just love being by myself, and a lot of people actually told me not to do that, but yeah, I'm trying. So yeah, I'm not saying that you have to resort to book alone. Do have social interactions, do, you know, create friendships and things like that, but I felt like, yeah, books really helped me in terms of learning about certain skills that I'm lacking at. And one thing also to note, that with books, I've never really seen it as expenses. I see them rather as investment, because the return that I get from reading books is huge. Like, I can't begin to tell you. You have to like try it yourself. Read books. You know, if you feel like you're lacking in certain things in life, or you feel uninspired, you feel bored, you feel like you don't have any purpose, start reading books. You will be amazed and surprised at how it could open a lot of thoughts that you never thought you would have, and even help you or guide you in thinking in the right direction. And books, they aren't 100% true each time. Like, you may not agree with every single book that you read. I most certainly do not agree with every single book that I read, but at least from reading the books, even the ones that I disagree to, I get another point of view, and, you know, the other side of the coin. And when people talk about certain topic, I, you know, have things in mind, and I can respond to, you know, both sides, if that makes sense. Yeah, my goal this year is to read 12 books, but I think, so one book a month when I start reading in January, but I think I've exceeded the 12 books mark, so I'm gonna do 24. So yeah, hopefully I can finish 24 books in this year. That's my goal for this year. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and you get something out of it, and I'll see you on the next video.